that I'm going to demo today is a little bit more involved than a lot of the things that we show, but it's really cool. So it's called the Braided Twist Tool. It is I don't like to call anything that doesn't measure in straight lines a ruler. It's more like a template. It's a cutting tool. What it lets you do is these really cool braided twists. So you can make table runners, you can make table toppers, you could make Christmas tree skirts. The beauty of this is there's no quilting, there's no binding. Yeah, I know, it's really neat. And the end result of when you get this all put together is so instantly gratifying that it makes you just want to go, oh. So I'm going to show you at the end of the video some of the variations you can make on this, but we're going to make the most basic, straightforward one that's on the cover of the booklet first, or on the demo today. So like I normally do when I'm demoing somebody else's tool, I always give proper credit. So this is the Braided Twist tool by Phillips Fiber Art. Cheryl Phillips makes some of the coolest patterns that are round that I've ever seen. In fact, the very first quilt we ever hung up in this store was one of her patterns, and I think it's cool because my brain doesn't work like that, and I love when I see how other people's brains make patterns. So she designed this really awesome braided twist tool that we're going to show you a couple of tips and tricks on. So the ruler and the book and all of the tools will be available at the end of the video. So when we get to there, I'll show you what they all are. I like her patterns for a couple of reasons. One, the pictures are fantastic. I love when there's color displays and line this up here dummy kind of pictures, and this booklet is loaded with them, okay? The other thing I like is when people give me extras. So for example, this is a sheet that every time you make one of these patterns, you can print this sheet out so that you know which piece is which. I take my UPS labels that run through my printer for shipping stuff, and I copy these onto those, and then I cut them out so that I can use them for stickers. So for instance, we're not making these ones today, but if you were going to make this particular pattern called the Blossom, you could print all of these stickers out, cut them apart, and as you cut your pieces, it says to cut 6. As you cut your pieces, you can stick them on there. The sticky notes don't work in my house because I have a cat and she likes to walk on them and steal them. And half the time I cut my stuff out and then I come back like, 4 days later and I don't know what I did. So I really like printing these out on UPS labels. So that's your first tip. So what we're going to do, all of the sizes of everything that you need to cut is in the pattern, so we're not going to spend any time on that. And like I said, this one is a little bit more involved, so I have done some pre-sewing on a number of things, okay? I also have a couple of kits that I'm going to offer you at the end, but in the meantime, without further ado, we're just going to start cutting stuff, and I'm going to give you some tips on some cutting, okay? So now, the pattern will tell you all of the pieces so here's our basic table runner. It's going to give you all of the pieces and the sizes that you need to cut to make this shape, okay? So I have already cut all those pieces and sizes out. The cool thing about this is that you can cut all of the shapes for this on this one ruler, all right? So the first thing that we're going to cut is a wedge. I love all of these rulers that are lined up on here, or all of these markings that are lined up. What we're going to cut first is our A piece. So since she has given me the size that I need of my block, all I have to do is cut the square. And I'm going to take and see that A mark right there, and then there's an A mark over here. So if I line both of these A's up with the sides of my square that's a predetermined size, that's how I know I get the right size cut, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is cut our wedge. We're gonna throw this away, okay? Easy enough. Another tip, if you're cutting curves, a smaller rotary blade is easier because it goes around the curve easier. I like a 28 millimeter. You could also use an 18 millimeter, but I like the size of this one better. All right, so this is what we're gonna call our A piece, okay? So I've got a wedge there. Then I'm going to take our B piece, or our B color. We've already cut our A wedge, which is these lines here. So now I'm going to take my B line. So see, there's a line that says B, and I'm going to match it up with the predetermined size of rectangle that has been given to me in the pattern. So here's my B line here and my B line here. So I just line that up, and then I cut this. You're not going to use this for this pattern, so you can throw it away or save it for something later, okay? Now, those are your first couple of tips. Next, we're going to talk about how to line up a curve. Now, I've done other videos with other rulers on how to get different curve pieces. There's a bunch of different ways to get there. For this particular piece, we're going to do sort of the old school way of sewing a curve. Now, here's a couple of tips. If you fold and find the middle of your curve, both your concave and your convex curves, right? We're going to find our middles, and I'm just going to finger press them. When I unfold this and I take my finger pressed pie piece, I'm going to line up my folds, which is right there. Put a pin. Now, we've talked about this on videos before. If you put your pins facing away, then you don't have to pull them out as you're sewing. You can sew over them because you're outside of your seam allowance. So I'm going to put a pin here in the middles. It doesn't look like it's going to fit, but I promise it will. And then I'm going to take my straight edge pieces and line them up over here. Now I pin these this direction because this is the straight part that I want to keep straight. And then I'm going to match up the other straight piece on this side, okay? And I'm going to match that up as well. Now it looks like my bottom piece is too big. See how baggy it is? So here's one of those times that we are going to use the adage baggy bottom. So if you sew your piece that's bigger with it against the feed dogs are going to take and grab that fabric and move in the fullness, and this is going to come out perfectly flat, I promise. Now, if it makes you feel better, you can take and kind of curve this like a bowl and then put a pin here too. Okay? And we've got this other side. So, I mean, this is the most pins I ever put in a curve. Honestly, I usually only do 3, but if it makes you nervous, go ahead and do 5. All right. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across like that. All right, which I have already done because, again, this is going to be a longish demo. So here's my curve. Here's my bigger piece. I have pressed it toward this shape. Yeah, I saved a piece of fabric and sewed it together. Don't mind that. So this is the shape that we're going to use. Okay? Now, here's the next marking on this ruler that also makes this cool. I'm going to flip this over. See this line that says place on curve of stitches? I mean, it can't get any easier. So I'm going to put this on the curve. Then I want to line up these parts here, which gives me a 1/4 inch seam allowance outside of the block. So you line it here, you line it here, and then you put this on that curved line here, okay? Now, this has come up every time I've made this particular block. If I put my line, if I put my stitching line right on my stitching line and this one right on here, this one never touches. I mean, well, it does sometimes. But I'm gonna show you how to make up for this. So it's more important that your curve line matches and that one or the other sides of this matches. You just sewed a bias curve, so it might be just a little bit wonky, okay? So don't freak out if this one doesn't line up perfect. I'm gonna show you how to fix it.
And when you first started your cuts, how did you know whether to cut on the inside or the outside?
It's all in the pattern. Okay, so we're gonna cut this piece away. I always have one spot that I don't push hard enough. Okay, so we're gonna get rid of that. Now, here is one of our half circles. All right, so we've cut the 3 wedges, we cut A. Next, we're going to take, I have my reference here, our other piece that matches this one. And you can actually take however many that your pattern calls for. You could probably cut up to 4 of these, honestly, at the same time. I'm going to cut 2 at once. You take the ruler and you line the ruler up, actually on the edge of the ruler now, okay? So we're going to line this up on the edge of the ruler right here. And we're going to trim away this outside piece. We're going to do that with our light, our dark, and our backing pieces. Okay, so here's our backing pieces. So this one ruler is going to cut out all of the shapes that we need to make this table runner. Okay? There's all our pieces. Now, I told you that there's no quilting in this. That's because you're going to use fusible fleece. So my fusible fleece pieces are already cut the size of the pattern. I'm going to fold this in half. Now here is a tip. Okay, we're going to fold it. The fold is going to be at the top because what I'm trying to make is a half curve, and on my ruler it tells me where to cut my fleece. My fleece is cut slightly smaller than my shape because it's batting basically. So I'm going to line up my fleece right here, and it comes around the square, and then it lines up over here. Okay, so this is exactly the shape. The fleece is a little fluffy, so you're not going to get through more than, one folded in half piece at a time, but you go ahead and cut out your half circle. Okay, we're going to throw that away. Now this is fusible. The bumpy side is the fusy side. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to make the hardest element of this, and we're going to go on about with the other pieces because I've already sewn some of them together. Now, where is my other piece here? This is the design of the actual block. This is what we call the end cap. Okay, I'm using batiks because it's just sort of easier. So this is the beginning of our shape. We're also going to take our backing pieces. So these are the steps for the hardest section of this project. We're going to take this and fold it in half. Okay. And I'm going to take and actually snip just about a 1/4 inch into the piece. I'm going to do that on both this side and this side. The snipping is important. I know it freaks you out a little bit, but go ahead and snip that full 1/4 inch. Now, since these are batiks, we don't have to worry so much about right side, wrong side. We're going to match these right side together, and we're going to match up that little notch that we cut. See it? Easy enough. Put a couple pins in. We're also going to take our 2 backing pieces. Okay, so these are exactly the same. 2 wedges. We're going to again find the center and cut a little notch. I like these scissors because it's easy to gauge what a 1/4 inch is, because I want to snip into it about a 1/4 inch. See, there's my snip. I'm going to pin these 2 together as well. And then we're going to sew these. We just need a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to use my 1/4 inch piecing foot, which is my favorite. So I've got my 1/4 inch piecing foot on there. And I'm going to start sewing right where that little notch is. Now, here's a little tip. If you fold this back before you go and put it under the foot, it's easier to see it. okay? Because I don't want to sew onto this side where the notch was before. I just want to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down half of this circle. Okay, I'm going to take that one out. And we're going to do the same thing with our pieced side. Fold this side back. Now, back stitching is helpful on this because you are going to be turning this and you're going to be fussing with it a little bit. I know quilters don't usually back stitch. In this particular project, it is handy to back stitch. Okay? I forgot that on that first piece, but it'll be okay. All right. Now, of course, my iron turned itself off. We're going to take and press these open, just where that seam is. Okay, this is the other reason that cutting the little notch is really handy, because then you can get right up to where that fabric ends. So we're just going to press this open up to the notch. It doesn't really matter what the pieces above that are doing. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to take and we're going to put these right sides together with these open seam allowances matched up here. Okay. So we're going to match that spot. And then you basically have this weird Pac-Man shape. So I don't pin this too much because it's a circle, they kind of go together pretty straight. But I do want to make sure that everything's lined up pretty well, okay? So we're going to get this squared up here. And you're going to match all of these pieces all the way around the circle. Let me grab one more pin here. Okay? Now I'm going to sew this circle all the way around the outside. You're going to leave this part open, okay? Now, some tips on when you're sewing a curve. If you have a machine that has good feed dogs, you shouldn't have to do much. This is another reason I really like a 1/4 inch piecing foot when I'm sewing a circle, is because I can see the piecing foot way out here. All I have to do is rub the fabric along that guide. And I'm barely putting any sort of pressure on the fabric to turn it. The feed dogs are kind of doing it for me. So I'm putting just a little bit of pressure on my fingertips and turning the fabric as it goes around the curve. But honestly, lining up that little guide on the foot, it just makes it a piece of cake. Okay, so don't worry too much that you can't sew a curve. You can, just take your time, it'll be all right. Okay, so we're going to sew this curve all the way around. And again, we're going to back stitch just a couple of stitches. Okay. Now I only cut one piece of flannel, so I need to cut one more. Forgot that I need 2 pieces for this curve. So we're going to line up our square again and cut that. Okay. Now I've got the bumpy side of my fusible fleece, and I'm going to give you a couple of tips on sewing with fusible fleece. Steam is your friend when you're using fusible fleece. If you take the bumpy side and you put it down on, we're going to put it on the inside of our piece. Okay, so this yellow piece is our backing fabric. Steam is your friend. So I'm going to turn my steam on. Maybe, there it goes. And I'm going to fuse this down. All right, so we're going to put 1/2 circle on either side of our curve here. And we're lining up our fusible fleece along the seam line, okay? So our fleece was cut out of a slightly smaller piece, so we should have a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, and you should have a 1/4 inch seam allowance-ish here in the center, okay? So if you use your steam, this stuff's gonna melt a whole lot easier, okay? Now I always like to repress my fusible fleece from the fabric side too, because it really makes that glue stick. Plus it just makes everything really flat, okay? Now, if you try to turn this right way out while it's still warm, you're gonna get better results. So if you try to turn this right way out while it's still warm, it turns a whole lot easier. Thank you. Okay, and I'm just gonna take my hand and push this out a little bit. But this tool right here is my absolute favorite tool for turning out a curve because of this shape here. One, your finger fits right inside there, so it kind of just becomes an extension of your hand. And I'm just gonna reach inside the circle and use that curved piece to push my circle out, okay? I'm gonna do that both directions all the way around. Then, because I've sewn a curve, steam is my friend still. So I'm gonna press this all the way around using steam. And what happens is you get this really satisfying circle of fused, I don't know, magic, okay? Now, the last part that makes this feel a little weird is that we're going to actually sew these pieces shut. I know that feels uncomfortable, but stay with me for a second. So I'm going to take the inside of my circle here, and I'm going to pull this side apart so that all I see, this is the other reason that we make those little snips right there, because I want to line up where those snips are with these two pieces, okay? Now here's another little tip. If you're using your 1/4 inch piecing foot, and you use just this section of the foot, that's going to give you a little more than 1/8 of an inch guide. So if you're trying to just sew something shut, you can use that part of the foot for a small guide foot, okay? So what I want to do is line this up where I'm going to start stitching right where that little snip is, and make sure this is all pulled out of the way. And I'm just going to sew with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew this shut. And I know for you quilters, this is a little weird. It was a little weird for me too, but it works. Okay, we're gonna sew that one, and then we're gonna flip the other side, and we're gonna sew up the other side. So make sure you pull this side out of the way. You've got these little snips here. When you drop your foot, you want the needle to come down right where that snip is, okay? This is another time, oops, I hit the wrong button. Drop your foot, go down. I hit the scissors when I didn't mean to hit the scissors. Okay, there we go. This is another time you want to backstitch a little bit because we're going to pull on this when we go to put everything together. Okay, so those are my tips for making this part of this element, okay? Now, the directions show you how to lay this all out together. We're gonna skip that part. So here is what is called my end caps. You'll make 2 of these. Then what you have is other half square circles. So some of them are going to have this color and some of them are gonna have this color. So we've done the same thing. We just sewed our 2 half circles together. We fused on our fusible. We're going to turn these right way out. And here's where my point turner, or my point-to-point turner comes in again. Okay, we're just gonna look at how easy that is to get your fold right on the edge. Okay. Now we're gonna pretend that all of this is put together. There is a diagram for how these all lay out. When you're laying these together, here's some more tips. One, you're gonna wanna snip these centers as well. So fold them in half, find the middle and snip them out, okay? This is why. When you go to put these together, you're gonna pull this back and you're gonna line up where the snips were, okay? Here's another great time to put your pins out of the way so you don't have to pull these out when you're taking it back and forth to the machine. So if you've put these all together right, wherever your snips are is where the last circle should line up. Okay, so we have all of these pieces put together. Let's pretend that this one's put together too. So when I go to line up the next one and it's all sewn together, my next one is going to line up with this snip like that, okay? And again, the placement of all of these things is in the pattern. Now, because of the magic of TV, I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's all ready. Except of course I did all the, oh man, my big reveal is going to get messed up. So when you lay these out, the pattern will tell you to put your, which side goes up and which side goes down, and it's all very, you know, instant gratification. So you're gonna have this weird sort of mismatch of stuff, okay? This is the diagram that the pattern has. You saw me pin all those pieces together. You're gonna take and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance from here and sew over all those pieces all the way down to this end, okay? Then you're going to take it out of the machine, you're going to lay out this side, and you're going to do the same thing and sew a seam allowance all the way down this side. So you got this big opening, right? Looks a little like a Muppet mouth. That's okay, because this is where the magic happens, okay? You're going to take this piece and you're going to hold this still and you're going to flip this over. Then you're going to hold this still and you're going to flip it over. And then you're going to hold this still and you're going to flip it over. And if that's not instant gratification, I don't know what is. Because, damn, that was cool, right? So now what you have is a solid backing and a twisted front.
That was just crazy.
Right?
Yeah,
it's like freaking magic. So I was reading the directions, because I've made her patterns before. I was reading the directions and I was like, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I saw it and I was like, oh, I'm surprised you guys didn't hear me up here going, what? Okay. So now here's a couple other tips. Now you have this open bit, right? You're like, oh no, what now? Here's my tip to do with this. There's two things you can do. You can either take a fusible web, put it in here, iron it shut, okay? You can also take your fusible web, run it along this section right here, stick that down and glue this down, okay, with a fusible web. You can also top stitch this if you choose to. You could come this side and then this side and then there. You can stitch this down any way that you want. My preferred method to this would probably be to use a product called FabriTac, which is a glue that would glue fabric to King Kong. Like, it is never, ever, ever going to come out. Don't ever use that on something that you want to be temporary or something you think you might ever pull apart, because it's not going to happen. But in this instance, you don't want this to come apart, like, ever. So this would be a good place to put that. It's also going to stop this from fraying. But since you can't see any of it once the placemat is laid out and pressed, who cares? It's all fine, okay? So this would be a really fun place to put some embroidery. You could put rickrack in the edge. You could stitch lace on the top. You could decorative stitch around the circles before you start doing all of this. There are endless possibilities of what you can do with this. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that are shown in the book. I started making, before I got distracted by, you know, actual grown-up work, I started making this with these fabrics. So this is going to be my circle, and then my little petal things are going to be these really cool batiks. So what happens is you do the same technique, only you make full circles, and then you sew a line down the middle and press them open, and then you top stitch them. So this weekend is a sewing day weekend, so I'll probably finish that up then, but that's a really fun one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the products that we use today. And if you have questions, there's still time to ask them. Okay, so the first thing, obviously, that we showed was the braided twist tool. And honestly, this is my one, you know, caveat. I think that people see this in the package and they're like, huh? Once you see it happen, though, it really is like magic. And so I think that you'll all have fun with this, especially since there's no quilting and there's no binding. It's just done when you're done. I like that. So number 301 is the braided twist tool, which is this. Number 302 is the 28 millimeter rotary cutter. This is really handy anytime you're going to cut a curve. You can do the curve with a regular size 45, but you don't get as smooth of a cut. And when you really try to go around the corner, you nick into your cutter. So it's just frustrating. So 28 millimeter cutter is really handy to have if you're going to cut curves. Number 303 is simply replacement blades. Before you start this project, especially since you're going to cut fleece, you're going to want a fresh blade. So if you already have a 28 millimeter ruler or cutter and you're like, do I have a blade? You probably don't. So number 303 is a 2-pack of refill blades. I used FabriTac when I was putting this together in the parts where I made the little snips. I just put a little drop of FabriTac there. Just because I'm gonna be fussing with it and turning it and moving it, I didn't want that to come apart. So when everything is all put together and all said and done, when you have these sections here, it's nice to have a little dab of FabriTac in there. If you don't have FabriTac in your sewing arsenal, there is a million things you can do with it. Number 304 is a bottle of FabriTac. They've updated the bottle in the past couple of years so that it goes on like a smoother bead instead of it just squirting out like glue. Now it has an applicator, which is pretty cool. So number 304 is FabriTac. Number 305 is the fusible that I would recommend for closing up those pieces, because this is only a 1/4 inch wide, so it's going to fit right within that seam allowance. This is also aplastic, which means it's tacky even before you iron it. So you peel it off the roll and stick it down because it's sticky like tape. It's not dry like Stitch Witchery, it's sticky like tape. So you stick it down and you peel off the paper, and then it's 2-sided fusible. You stick your 2 pieces together and iron it, and then it becomes permanent. I love this stuff. So 1/4 inch aplastic is number 305. Then we talked about the FabriTac. This is the glue that will hold all things together. It's only a 2-ounce bottle, but my 2-ounce bottle has lasted me for years, okay? 306 is a 2-ounce bottle of FabriTac. If you don't want something to come apart ever, this is really good glue. I've actually used this to glue down bindings on art quilts that I know is never going to get washed, and then I don't have to hand stitch it, and nobody knows the difference, okay? This will not come out in the wash either, okay? So you can do some interesting repairs and whatnot with it. FabriTac is number 306. Then what we did was we made you some handy dandy kits. So kit number 1, or I guess that's number 307, is this kit. So the fabric that I actually used in today's sample, which comes with this, and the backing fabric, plus the fleece. So everything you need to make this, besides the tool and the thread, is in this kit. So this makes a 30, like I think it's 33.5 inch table runner. If you want to make it longer, just get 2. just get 2 kits because you can make this as long as you want. So this I think would be really pretty on top of like a hutch, or hang over the sides. You could do all kinds of fun embellishments on it. So number 307 is this batik kit that I showed, the first kit that I showed. Number 308 is a custom made Christmas bundle. So I just pulled the fat quarters to show you what I was thinking. You're gonna get this fabric, which would be part of the braid, probably where I put the white on this one. This accent fabric, which is the other part of the braid. And then the backing fabric is these cute little cardinal birdies. So this is a winter holiday / Christmas bundle, but it's pretty festive all the time. That one's number 308. Again, this will make one 33-inch-ish table runner. If you want to make it longer, I would get 2. And then the last kit that we made, number 309, is a floral bundle. So the first fabric is this amazing peony and succulent and rose fabric. Look how pretty those colors are. The accent color for the braid is this sort of watercolor print that pulls out the purple and the pink and the little bit of peachy cream that's in there. And then the backing fabric is these big, beautiful roses. Okay, so this one is number 309. And again, this comes with the fleece in the kit. Okay, so that's everything I have to show for today's sale.
You got 310.
I got 310. Because I added this after I printed out my thing. Also, number 310 is the point-to-point turner. This is a must-have if you're going to push out curves. All right. Oh, if you want to cut your own fabric, then you need a half a yard, basically. So for your front fabrics, you're going to use a half a yard, a yard for your backing, and a yard of fusible fleece. Okay. If you want, I didn't put the fusible fleece on the sale because our website sells in quarter yard increments, but you can always grab it from the website and I'll combine shipping for you. Or if you want to build your own table runner, half a yard, 1 yard for a standard table runner. Okay. That's it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I hope you guys were as amazed by this ruler as I was. Again, it doesn't do much in the package, but I feel like once you see it happen, it's like, Cheryl gives you all kinds of really neat variations on this. And the directions are fantastic. So you can do patchwork in the curve. This is that big circle again. Here's some more sort of monochromatic offset triangles. I like this one too. She did a different stripe. Each stripe is a different color. The possibilities are kind of endless. And she gives you directions on how to do all of these variations in this one book. And the book comes with the ruler. Okay? So I hope everybody had fun. I hope you're inclined to try this one. This week's sale is going to be contemporary or modern fabrics on Wednesday, and then we'll have a normal Angie TV on Friday.
Oh, has she written other pattern books for this template specifically?
I don't know about for this template specifically, but she does have other patterns for her 10-degree rulers that are really neat. There's one that looks like an eagle, and there's one that looks like a phoenix, and then she's done a lot of in the round kind of designs that go with her 10-degree ruler. Again, all her patterns are really easy to read, and I love them.
And her book does come with the ruler.
The book comes with the ruler. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks for playing with us today, guys. I will see you Wednesday. Have a good night.